Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Skew Space. It's a sad one today. It's the end of an era. It's the end of our 4-part series all around the incident response lifecycle. So what have we done so far? So essentially the first episode was on preparation, second episode was on detection and analysis, third on containment and eradication, and that brings us to the end today, which is often perhaps the most overlooked one, and it is the post-incident activity. So we'll obviously get into why I said it was the most overlooked one in a second. But today, obviously, is the final one about the incident response lifecycle. So before we get into it, you should be familiar with the guests, but if you're only tuning in on this episode, gents, if you're okay to do a very quick intro. Simon, I'll come to you first. A little bit about who you are and who you work for.
Perfect. So I'm Simon Lang. I'm Director for Global Incident Response Operations at CyberClan.
James?
And I'm James Allman-Talbot. I head up our global threat intelligence team at Quorum Cyber.
Perfect. Thank you very much, chaps. So, as I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, post-incident activity then, the smoke has cleared, the breach has happened, and we're licking our wounds a little bit now, okay? Why is the post-incident activity often overlooked then? Why are we just like, okay, business as usual, let's crack on now? James, I'll come to you first. Why is it overlooked?
Because we're all busy.
Yep.
Fundamentally. And it is one of those things where, and I think some of the clients that we work with, they kind of put it down to, yeah, we know we need to do all of this stuff, but there's also a million other things that we need to do at the same time. So it is one of those things where you're relieved to get out of the incident. You've got through this horrendous time. And, some incidents, particularly the ransomware incidents, they're going to take months to get to that point, right? Yes. So you've already gone through this long period of figuring out what's happened and how it's happened and everything else. And then you're suddenly at a point where you're like, oh, thank God that's finished. and then you kind of like, yeah. There's a few other things that we need to do, and fine, we'll address that. But I do think it's one of those things where you need to do things to improve your chances when it comes to responding to it again.
Yes.
But it kind of goes on the end of an already long list of things to do. And you do need to make a conscious effort to kind of put it up there. You do need to make sure that your people aren't burning out as well. Yes. And it's really common to just want a little bit of respite at the end of it. So, absolutely. I think it is absolutely critical, but it becomes one of many, or you might be 2, 3, 5 things on your list that you need to get through.
Yep.
But it's a long list, right? And we've all got stuff to do.
Yeah, I'll circle back round to like the burnout that you mentioned there towards the end of the podcast. But it's like a little bit about sort of you guys at CyberClan, you guys at Quorum, do you advise, because obviously you guys are external and you are offering incident response services to these companies. Do you guys say like, look, do you highlight that yes, we've done our jobs, or do you be like, okay, it's back to you now? Do you recommend doing a phased return to action? Do you recommend a key learns, or do you say like it's up to you how you approach the next 6 to 12 months? What do you guys advise? Si, I'll come to you.
No, good one with that. We can only advise so far as we can advise. So whether they listen or not, that's the problem. Because a lot of the work comes in from insurers, the last thing we want is for a client to get hit again. So we try and push everything we can to ensure this will never, ever happen again. So the lessons learned at the end is so important with that. So we tell them, we do security audits during the actual investigation itself, because we don't want them to have the green light until we're confident that no one's immune to it, but chances of them getting hit again are minimal with that. So we try and push that as much as we can. However, like you say, the client, we're used to it. We can not go on forever with it, but the client, they just want to see an end to it.
Yes,
they're bored of our voices by now. The incident's finished. They have a backlog of orders they probably need to fulfill and things like that. They just want to get business as usual and make up a lot of the lost money that they've lost, and then IT goes to the back of their minds again at that point. Yes. So it's the hardest point in the actual life cycle of an incident response engagement to actually get the clients back on a call because they're busy. We're busy because you've told them everything they need to know at this point that they care about, and they're almost back up and running for you. So
and I think there's two very distinct types of organisations that I think we see, and one is the organisation who is just happy to see you gone and you'll never hear from them again, or there's the organisation that understands the business risk that is now posed to them, right? Yes. And we talk a lot about ransomware, but ransomware is one of those interesting ones where it's relatively easy to quantify the damage that you're going to sustain, right? So we're about to release in January, we're going to release our 2026 Outlook report.
Yep.
And we've got a ton of stats in there from our threat actor negotiation capability. One of the stats that we've picked out is around the average amount of ransom that is demanded by threat groups. There's one threat group, Klopp. The average initial demand from them is $11 million. So, you as a business can look at that and go, well, that's a huge amount of money. So suddenly you've got something to quantify the level of damage that you're going to actually sustain.
Yep.
And businesses do fall into one of two camps. They're either, oh, it's never going to happen to us, like we're not bothered about it, or they're actually looking at this and going, yeah, no, we are really worried about this. And particularly post-incident in a ransomware scenario, they're extremely aware of the damage that it's caused. And in those incidents, they desperately don't want it to happen again. So they're more willing to go through those post-incident activities to improve their posture than the others who are, I think particularly in like a business email compromise case where, okay, perhaps the damages weren't as bad. Yeah. They kind of look at it and they go, it was fine. Like, it was a little bit of sort of, uncomfortable. Yeah, exactly. But it very much depends, I think, on fundamentally how the board takes that level of risk. And there's two very distinct camps in that scenario.
Do you guys check in with a milestone at, say, 6 months post incident activity? Do you say, look, we can check back in with you? Is that part of your services, or is it?
We offer it, but the only time they normally ever take that up is if they've come on to us after the incident as a SOC client or as an MSP, like an IT client. After the fact, if they've not taken us upon those services, then it's very rare for them to do that, unless there's been another incident.
Yes. James, you mentioned there about the type of attack and the business email compromise. That raises a really good point as to where I want to go next with this. And it's kind of unpicking a little bit around the context behind the attack and why this post-incident activity is so important and putting the meat on the bones. Because if, for example, if it is sort of like, let's just use really common example, and it's been done to death this year, and I can't wait to not mention JLR and M&S and Harrods next year, and we can move on to some unfortunate others all. But this year, supply chain attack was massive, and therefore it is the key discussion point in sort of incident response and boardroom chats. But like you say, and that one is a relatively big one. Business email compromise is often sort of overseen as a phishing email. How do you fall for a phishing email in 2025? Do you know what I mean? But as we all know, with the sophistication of AI, they are becoming a lot more sophisticated. And I think business, you guys will correct me if I'm wrong, business email compromise is still the number one most sort of like entry point to an organisation. So in a roundabout way that I'll come to you guys is a little bit in the sense of, how can we move on from like, don't worry, it's just someone clicking on an email, we'll sort that out, to, well, how are you going to sort it out? How is it not going to get lost in a report and say, like, won't happen again? Are you going to put in a 6-step security awareness training program? Are you going to bring on vendors like Abnormal Security, for example? How do you put context into what caused the breach? So I'll come to you first.
With that one, I never want to judge people. I don't understand how it gets to where it gets with business email compromises at times, because some are quite ludicrous in regards to it. To me, I'm an expert, of course, it's obvious, but then to the layperson, it might not be obvious, especially when it's targeting the finance department, which is often the case. So with the business email compromise, bit of high level for anyone listening who doesn't know, most of the time when we're dealing with business email compromises, the end goal is to do like a man in the middle of attack, to change invoices, to inject an invoice, a fake invoice, into an email chain.
Yep.
So a not fictitious, but a real bank account is being paid that money that's controlled by a threat actor. So with that, it's often, for the security side of life, to stop it happening again, we will try and harden most of the time it's M365, Microsoft 365, we'll try and harden their security posture in there. In particular, geolocations, obviously they can be bypassed, but the threat actors go for low-hanging fruit. So if they can't log in for whichever place they are in the world, because we've put a geo restriction, so you can only log in from the UK, for instance, that can stop a lot of these types of attacks. It's so simple as well.
Yep.
MFA, I don't understand why everyone doesn't have MFA nowadays, but not everybody has MFA nowadays. There are certain situations whereby it's not really viable, where you're not allowed to take phones into environments, but in those environments you shouldn't be doing this type of work anyway. So yeah, it's a funny one, and I've gone off on a tangent. And,
no, that's fine.
Have the question.
James, anything to add on that? Yeah.
I think so. This is why we talk about defense in depth, right? Yep. And there's never going to be one particular thing that's going to stop like phishing emails or business email compromise attacks. And I think of it as layers of Swiss cheese, right? Your defense is layers of Swiss cheese. Every level of defense has to have holes in it because your business needs to operate, right? But the more levels that you can put in, the more the holes in those layers don't line up. Yep. And you're making life harder and harder and harder for the attackers. Humans are infallible, right? Humans make mistakes. That will never change. No amount of training and awareness and everything else. I think people immediately sort of think phishing. Oh, we need to do some phishing awareness campaigns. Right. Yeah, you do, but that's not going to solve all of your problems. You are always going to have people who are in a rush and will make mistakes. That's just life. But the more controls, you mentioned things in there like geofencing, you can put in MFA, you can put in all sorts of detection capabilities that will make it much harder for an attacker to get through. You might not be able to completely prevent them from getting in, but you can put some roadblocks in their way, and you can have some detection mechanisms that mean that you can detect them before they can actually do any damage. Yep. And so I think, business email compromise absolutely is the most common attack that we see. And it's not easy to protect yourself against it, but there are certain things that you can do to make it much, much harder for the attackers to do what they want to do.
Nice. I'll always remember that Swiss cheese analogy as well.
Okay, I'm going to steal that.
It's a good one. Yeah.
So just to take it one step back, actually, like you said, you can only advise these organisations on what to do when you're sort of saying goodbye to them. What if I was, and again, I'll use the analogy of me being the CEO of an organisation. My question would be like, okay, how do I actually run an effective post-instant response activity? Because I've never done it before. Thankfully, hopefully my organisation's never been hit before, and hopefully it'll never get hit again, but in the reality, it has been hit. So what do I do to be like, okay, where do I start with this cleaning up the mess thing? You tell me, what are the protocols? James, I'll come to you first on this.
What you need to do very much depends on your organisation, where you are on your security journey, things like that. When organizations get into that kind of post-incident phase, they're in one of two places. Either they were already on a security maturity journey, or they weren't, and this is the very first thing that's that has made them think about improving their security posture. Honestly, the one thing that makes a difference is a really good project manager. Okay. I've seen some organizations with exceptional project management, and you have to see it through. It's not a job that anyone really wants to do, but it really does make the difference. And either that means you're integrating the learnings from that incident into your existing security maturity journey, and maybe changing the priority order of some of the things you wanted to do. or you're starting afresh and this is a brand new thing for you. You're at a point where you've gone, yeah, we kind of knew we needed to do this security maturity stuff, but never really got around to it. Well, now you're doing it.
Yes.
Project management, and it really does make the difference. Exactly what you need to do is massively going to change depending on what's happened and what state you're in. Nice. But if you take all of those learnings, you actually embark and take this on as a project, then yeah, you're going to be way ahead of anyone else.
That's it. It's accepting that it happened. Like, not it's so. There's such a big chance of, like you said at the start, this leadership fatigue. Everyone just wants to brush it under the carpet. Let's just move on. But actually, be like, oh, this is a key window now. We are fine. We are stable. It happened. How do we learn from it? Yeah. Sat, is there anything you want to add on terms of like how you actually sort of review a post-instant review activity? Anything like beyond the project management?
Yeah, so the project manager is a great one with that. Having a strong one will make it. The good, like, I'm just reiterating what he says. The good ones we've worked on, I say good ones, they've had either strong leadership or strong project management on it, and everything's gone smoothly. It's when everyone is picking up little bits and bobs here and there, and it just gets a little bit messy. But on the actual post-instant review, we'll reiterate all the root causes and things like that. And then we will want to have a touch point a little bit after that for some tabletop exercising with them. So we've gone through the incident, a real world incident. Now we want to go through a fictitious one afterwards, but at a slower pace, so they have that learning environment, and we can base it on the actual incident that we encountered with them. With that, people do enjoy tabletop exercises, so we find that a pleasant way of doing it. Everyone likes a bit of gamification, so injecting that into it as well. So it's not just a case of them listening to us reading off a report that's loads of pages and only technical people can really understand most of it anyway, apart from the executive summary, which is designed for their leadership team with that. So yeah, we try and inject that into it at the end to help them.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And I think also that actual review of what went well, what didn't go so well, what could we do to improve the way that we responded to this. And that is one reason why note-taking and everything else during the incident is so critical, because you do want to go back kind of step by step. Okay, how did we detect this? Like, what could we do to improve our detection? You know, how was our response? How quickly were we able to respond? What can we do to make sure we respond quicker next time? What hurdles did we have? You know, really going through that incident, whether you're on that kind, you know, wherever you are in that security journey, really taking the time to go back through that. And that's going to be painful, but you will learn so much about what you need to do moving forwards. And then, so taking the time to do that, but also you mentioned the sort of executive summary and things like that. There's a tendency for people to make this all about technology.
Yeah.
And it's not all about technology. That review has to take into account, yes, the technology, but also the people, the process, right? The governance that you have around it, the whole thing. And yes, you need to start implementing some new technology or whatever else, but you also do need to brief that to the board in a way that they understand. And you need to actually relate it back to the core risk that you're trying to protect yourselves against, that you've just seen the really bad end of. But yeah, that review has to take into account everything that you've done, and you know, you can lean on experts and third party views to get that viewpoint. I mean, we've seen this done really, really well and really, really badly. So, you know, learn from our experience, learn from the experts that you can bring in.
Yep.
And go through it with a fine-tooth comb.
Yep.
But see it as an opportunity to make things better.
Absolutely. Yeah. You made a really, really terrific point there in the middle of that. And it is a little bit around sort of the human side. And it is sort of like what you can then start embedding from this. Because we all learn when it's relevant to ourselves. I think we might have touched on it in a previous podcast, that I know personally the way I learn from experts like yourselves in the industry, before it goes into my northern noggin here, I sometimes have to put it into analogies, whether that be would that be like football, or explain it to me like a traffic light system or something like that. We all learn in our own language, and then we can be like, oh, okay, that's what that means, and then I can anchor it back into security. And we all do it. It's how we learn as children, and it's how we are genetically made up. So my point to this being is that those that are missing out on this post-incident activity are missing out on what could be the best learning, because everyone else has to be like, oh, we're doing the security awareness training, it's tabletop exercise, and you said gamification's great. But to get to that elite level, it's like, well, you've got something that's relevant to your company that you went through personally. It couldn't be any more relevant. You couldn't actually have something that is more relatable. And it's like prime, ready for you to learn and to get it into your head, and that you will know for the rest of your career, even if you move on from there. It's like, oh, I've been involved in a cyber incident, actually, and this is what happened at the time, this is what we learned, and this is what we did moving forward. So those that are brushing over it are missing an absolute gold mine if you're looking at it as a glass half full. So to move it on in terms of where we want to go to next it is the human side, and it is a little bit about, okay, how do you now then approach the people that have been affected? How do you look after those that were on the front line? And I suppose it's more so for your guys' team, not necessarily those that have been affected. And then secondly, how do you then promote a culture from within? So obviously going back to the client, and they're saying like, look, you need to be like not telling off your staff here. You need to be like rewarding them for their transparency here, and thanking them for sticking through the hard times. I can't remember who I went to first. Did I go to you first? Who wants to take this one first?
I can take this one first.
You want to take this one first? I'm trying to do this evenly, and I completely forgot. So yes, the human behind the screen. How do you look after your team, and B, how do you advise your client to be like, look, they're not in trouble. You need to reward this in case it happens again. Reward a positive security culture. How do you guys approach that?
Yeah, so internally, burnout is a massive thing in this industry. In most of cyber, to be honest, in particular the security side, because it's just non-stop for us. There's always incidents going on. We're always having to put out fires all over the world with that. So yeah, we want to ensure people take the time off that they need. I know it's a bit cliched, and then a lot of us in this industry, we have that type of personality where we struggle taking that time off anyway. So it's hard trying to, if you're not taking the time off, it's hard to get your staff to also take that time off as well with that. But anything we can do to take workloads off people that have been going 90% for so long, we'll always do. But in regards to the mistake part, I like that a lot, because when I onboard people onto the teams at the organisation, I always let them know I would rather someone makes a mistake, admits to it and tries to fix it, or come up with some solutions to it, than either not willing to put their neck on the line and make that mistake in the first place, because we need people who think for themselves, because otherwise we may as well be doing the jobs ourselves with that, or B, try and cover it up with that. So that's how I treat people internally. And then when speaking to the actual clients themselves, if we're facing roadblocks, a lot of the time we see the issues we face on incident response engagements. Often, not all the time, and I'll say sometimes, because I don't want to put that broad brush out there, with internal IT, because they may have made that mistake and they're trying to cover things up. We're impartial. We don't care. We just want to find the actual facts itself. So people like to cover their mistakes, so the finger isn't pointing at them. So it's quite difficult if they're being that roadblock by not letting us do what we need to do. We'll highlight that. We'll raise that. Or a third-party IT company who thinks their contract's on the line, because, again, they haven't had the security controls in place the contract said that they should have. So we need to play that politics game as well when working with these people. That's not really answered the question you've asked, but I thought it was a pertinent point, especially with the reward scenario, because people make mistakes. People are human. We all make mistakes, but it's how you remedy them afterwards and admit to them is the key factor here. But yeah, if people make mistakes and we're constantly on their backs for it, then it's going to increase that burnout, and people aren't going to want to. They're not going to want to take those risks. We need people to take risks when it comes to incident response, because it's fast-paced, fast-hitting. We need to get solutions ASAP, and we're encountering systems we may never have encountered before. Network structures that never in our wildest dreams would we ever think would exist or should exist, that we're having to remedy. Obviously, it's different when it comes to digital forensics. That's when you have to take that surgical approach to absolutely everything, and mistakes aren't acceptable when it comes to that. But incident response, there is a little bit of leeway because we need results fast with that, but not being blasé about it, of course, at the same time. But hopefully that's helped there. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. No, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think it kind of similar to what you're saying. It's leadership by example, right? And so I worked an incident a couple of years ago, big ransomware incident, where the CTO was kind of in a little bit of a state where he was like, I don't know if I'm going to survive this. Like it was a hugely impactful incident to them. But as we got towards the end of the incident, he ended up getting a fairly substantial pay rise because of the way that he had handled the incident. Oh, okay. And he was like, oh, wow, okay, like, was not expecting that, but his leadership team recognized that he, grabbed it with both arms, he dealt with it, and, it would be so easy in that position for them to go, well, you've been in place for X number of years and this shouldn't have happened, but it did happen, and it was how it was responded to that made the difference. So, I would love to see more of that, right? Every single CISO or CIO or CTO that we deal with is in that position of, I don't know if I'm going to be here in the next 3 months, but actually reward them for doing the right thing. Phishing training we talked about. I absolutely detest when we see phishing training, phishing simulations and stuff that are going out where staff get penalized for clicking on the emails. Because what that does is that trains them to say, if I do click on the phishing link and I report the fact that I've clicked on the phishing link, I'm going to get penalized for it. And that's not what you want. You want people to be able to realize that they've clicked on the phishing link and feel safe in the fact that they can report it, because otherwise they're not going to report it, you're not going to know about it, and you can't do anything about it. So leading by example. We need to get away from all of this stigma around having incidents, and we said it, people are infallible, people make mistakes, and we need to make sure that people can own up to their mistakes, because then we can react to it.
Yeah. It's so when you strip it all back, and again, this is me learning through analogies. When you strip it all back, I'm just thinking about, we're all dads, and it is like it's I've got a 4-year-old, I've got a 6-month-old, and it's like promoting that safe culture. Is like, look, when my 4-year-old, when he gets in trouble, it's like, come tell me, okay, what did you do to your sister? Yes. Okay, come tell me, don't worry, I'm not going to shout at you. Yeah. And then he'll be like, I put this blob on her head or something like that, and it upset her. All right, okay, well, what do? We don't do that again, do we? Because it upsets her. Yeah. And it's what you were saying there about, okay, it's what you were saying right at the end there about promoting that safe culture. But going back to the CTO dealing with an incident, he was like, okay, I need to be transparent, I need to be open. Again, it's just behavioural stuff, this, where like, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be like, I'm going to own up to the fact that we are in the mud a little bit here, I'm going to do the best to get us out. Yeah. It's all just behavioural stuff, this, isn't it? And it's not nothing. Yes, it is masqueraded by our career and about cyber, but this is about how us as individuals respond and behave, isn't it? So, a lot sort of take away with that. And one of my last questions to you chaps is a little bit about, okay, what was right yesterday might be wrong today, and vice versa, wrong, right? It's the adaptability, and it's how the goalposts actually move. So these organisations, these very mature organisations, again, sorry to keep bringing up Cyber M&S, these are mature organisations that have good security practices in there, and it's like it's testament to the fact that every organisation is never 100% secure. So they have incident response teams, they have playbooks that they would be doing, they have tabletop exercises that they'll be doing. But my point is that now that they're going through this post-incident activity, what should they be doing? Should they be like, okay, we need to update these playbooks because it didn't work. We need to change these tabletop exercises because, not that they don't work, but because we've now got that key learn. What's actually, do you think, going on internally with these organisations? Again, I think, James, I'm going to come to you first this time. What's going on internally with these chats? Do you think there's some goalposts being moved now?
The goalposts are always moving.
Yep.
And if there is one thing in that sort of post-incident activity that you need to take away from that, it's that it never ends.
Yep.
You have to be continually reassessing everything. Your plans, your playbooks, your security architecture. You can go through an 18-month or 2-year plan to improve your security, and you get to the end of it, and you would kind of think, oh, great, that's that done. Thanks very much. It's never done. Yeah. And this is going back to the burnout point. This is one of the reasons why burnout is such a big issue in the industry, because it never finishes. You never get to a point where you can go, great, that's that done. Thanks very much. On to the next thing. So you have to build into that post-incident activity the fact that you do have to continually review things. Yep. Things change all the time. Not just the security landscape, but your technology stack changes. Particularly with big organizations, their technology stack changes on a monthly basis almost. So you have to continually reassess, reevaluate your existing plans, your playbooks and everything else, to make sure that you are as up to date as possible. And it can be one of the hardest things to do, but that's why it never ends. That's why that post-incident activity can go on for a long, long time. Yep. And realistically, your security maturity program will never end.
Yes.
It has to carry on. Yep. Otherwise, you'll be back to square one.
Yep. So, anything to add on that?
Yeah, and don't just look internally for it. Okay. From what I've been reading about some of these large-scale incidents over the past, not naming names.
Don't worry, I've named them enough for you.
Yeah, but they need to review their supply chain with that. You may have the most perfect security in the world internally, but if you rely on a certain aspect on your supply chain, and that's the weak link, and that's how people get in, then that's what people need to be reviewing with that. So obviously, it's cheaper to outsource certain aspects of businesses. It makes complete sense. However, you just got to make sure that that's not going to have an impact in the future should their security not be in place as well. So, any playbooks you have, you need to account for not just what's happening internally, but what's happening externally as well. That's my key point on this. Yeah.
Fantastic. And it is time to actually say goodbye now, chaps. So, if you enjoyed this episode, there is actually a full series in which Shai and James actually take us through the full incident response lifecycle. So if you're looking for that bite size, I say bite size, but it's only 2 hours that we've kind of accumulated over the 4 episodes, then be sure to check out the full series that I'll be sure to put a link down below. But for the last time, James, Shai, thank you very much for coming on the Screw Space podcast. Don't be strangers. And I've really enjoyed having a chat with you over this year throughout the full lifecycle.
Yeah, likewise. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, chaps.
Thank you.